Assalamu alaikum to all our listeners. My name is Nazim Kazmi. Due to the advent of the month of Ramadan, the brothers have been busy with their religious obligations and the celebration of the birth of Imam Hassan al-Islam and the commemoration of the martyrdom of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi. It's quite pertinent then to finally come to this session with the issues that have been discussed, and having gone through all of the evidences, whether from Shia academia or Sunni academia and historical sources, we've now reached a point where all the evidences have been presented, and hopefully the audience will have made up its mind, or will at least have taken its initial steps to making up its mind as to where the truth actually lies. But we have been sent a number of questions, both queries and the seeking of further explanations as to some of the incidences mentioned. So in order to elaborate and expand on those, I will first ask Brother Sayyid Firdaus if you could address the question of whether or not Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib al-Islam retaliated to the attack and the surrounding circumstances. There is a query, a question as to whether or not our Imam actually responded to the attack or not.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم صلى الله على محمد وعلى محمد وعجل فرجهم. Thank you very much. Yes, as about this question, that why Amir al-Mu'minin did not defend Fatima al-Zahra salam alayha, then if you're going by the historic recorded history that we have, we see that yes, Amir al-Mu'minin defended. Let's read from the oldest source that we have about this incident, which is from the book of Sulaim. And we have here, beginning with the part that Umar ordered he's the group of men who were with him to carry firewood and flames, and they put it around the house of Amir al-Mu'minin and Fatima al-Zahra salam alayha, and then Umar shouted so that Amir al-Mu'minin and Fatima salam alayha hear, saying, والله لا تخرجن يا علي ولا تبايعن خليفة رسول الله وإلا أزرمت عليك بيتك النار. That by Allah, you should either come out, O Ali, and pledge allegiance to the successor of the Messenger of Allah, or I will ablaze your house upon you with fire. And then Fatima al-Zahra salam alayha said that, O Umar, ma lana wa lak, what do we have to do with you? We don't have anything to do with you. Why are you here? فقال افتحي الباب وإلا أحرقنا عليكم بيتكم. Omar said that open the door, or we will burn it down upon you, your house upon you. Then she said, Ya Omar, ألا تتق الله تدخل على بيتي? Oh Omar, don't you fear Allah? You want to enter into my house? But Omar refused to leave. So Omar asked for some firewood and burned it on the door, and then kicked the door and entered into the house. So Fatima salam alayha confronted him, came forward and shouted, "O Father, O Messenger of Allah." Then Omar raised his sword with the shield that it had and hit to the side of Fatima al-Zahra, and she shouted, "O Father!" And then with a whip that he had, he also hit one of his arms, and she shouted again and cried, "O Messenger of Allah, لبئس ما خلفك Abu Bakr wa Umar." That, O Messenger of Allah, Abu Bakr and Umar have succeeded you among us in the most evil manner, in the worst manner. And then in this moment, Amir al-Mu'minin jumped and held Umar with his clothes and knocked him down, and then shook him first, and then knocked him down, and then started punching him and choking him, wanted to kill him. And then he remembered the statement of the Messenger of Allah, that the Messenger of Allah told him. And then Amir al-Mu'minin said, by the one who favored Muhammad with the prophethood, O son of Sahak, if it was not something that was written in the book of Allah, and had been determined before, and the covenant that the Messenger of Allah gave me, you would have known that you cannot enter into my house. So I would have killed you. But since the Messenger of Allah told me not to, I'm not killing you. And then Omar, in this brief moment, then shouted for help. So the others were standing by the door. We also mentioned from some Sunni sources in the previous episodes that Khalid and a group of other men, they were staying at the door. They were not inside the house yet. In this first seconds of the event. And then when Omar called for help, they entered into the house, and then Amir al-Mu'minin wanted to grab his sword, went towards his sword, and in this moment also 𝗦𝗪𝗧𝗏 went to Abu Bakr that the something is happening here, because he was afraid that Ali alayhi salam might come out with his sword. So Abu Bakr said to 𝗦𝗪𝗧𝗏, go back. If he came out, it's okay, and if he didn't, then you should attack the house. So you should enter and bring him, so to speak. And if they refuse, then just burn the house down. So this is also Abu Bakr saying. That's why we saw in the previous sources that we had that sometimes the command was given by Abu Bakr. Some other resources show that it was given also by Omar. But here we see that no, actually they were both of them involved in this case. So 𝗦𝗪𝗧𝗏 came back. They entered into the house without permission, and then Ali alayhi salam then wanted to grab his sword, but they grabbed the sword and they broke it, and they were a big group of people, big number of people inside the house. And then they put a rope against around his neck. This is also the same thing that we saw from Muawiyah, the objection that you were like a camel who was dragged to pledge allegiance. So this is referring to that situation. In any case, then Fatima salam alayha came between them, so prevented them from stopped them at the door of the house. And then 𝗦𝗪𝗧𝗏 in this case, at this time, then hit her again with the whip, and she passed away, and the mark of that was still seen on her arm. So yeah, this is, may Allah curse him and whoever sent him, as we see here also in the book of Sulaim. So this is the part that we see from the earliest source that we have about this case. Let's read also the parts about the allegiance of how till Amir al-Mu'minin was brought to the mosque. Then the book of Sulaim says that the narration is actually reported by Salman to Sulaim. So Salman is narrating to Sulaim because Salman was also a witness, or was also there. So this description of the events is from the tongue of Salman right now, in the book of Sulaim. There are two versions. So one in the book of Sulaim, one is from Salman and also from Ibn Abbas. But I think Ibn Abbas one is also actually comes from Salman. But Sulaim has put both those reports in the book. In any case, then Amir al-Mu'minin was dragged towards the Maqbul by force. towards Abu Bakr, and Umar was standing behind him with the sword, and also Khalid ibn al-Walid and Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah and Salim Mawla Abi Uzaifa and Muaz ibn Jabal and Mughira and Usayd ibn Hudayr and Bashir ibn Sa'id and another group of people who were armed with Abu Bakr in the mosque. And at this moment, Sulaim says that I asked Salman, they entered upon Fatima without permission. So without permission, they entered the house. Salman said, yes, by Allah, they did that. وَمَا عَلَيْهَا مِنْ خِمَارٍ. So Fatima al-Zahra did not have khimar on her. She shouted, she cried, "Oh Father, evil it is what Abu Bakr and Umar did after you before your eyes did not even close in your grave. So they're doing this to us, and you passed away just a few days ago." And she was shouting with the highest voice. So when Abu Bakr and those who were around him saw this, they also all started crying, except for Omar and Khalid and Mughira ibn Shu'bah. And Omar then said that, "Inna lasna min sawarain fi shay." We don't have anything to do with the woman. So this was basically nature of Umar, misogynistic personality, as it's evidenced in Sunni and Shia sources. So this is basically the summary of what happened until here. We saw it's actually basically the same reports that we presented from Sunni narrations, but there you have to put all of them together to kind of get this picture that we see in Shia narrations, because of the censorship that is common in the Sunni sources. So they do not give you a full picture because of their ideology and dogma against around the companions of the Prophet. So basically, this is the part, and we saw the main point was that Amir al-Mu'minin, of course, defended. So Fatima al-Zahra, and he knocked down Omar and punched him and wanted to choke him and kill him. But what prevented him was the will of the Messenger of Allah that told him not to fight them except unless he has 40 people, 40 supporters. In any case, as I mentioned also previously, is also very important to note that in that situation, those many men, and most of them all of them were actually armed because they are attacking a house and forcing the family of the Prophet for allegiance. And also the Zubair incident that he had also sworded himself, and we presented the narration and the situation around this entire incident. We saw that actual fighting, and even Abu Bakr himself in his deathbed confessed to that they had closed the door for a war. Here we see that these armed men are inside the house of Fatima al-Zahra and Amir al-Mu'minin, and they have already arrested Amir al-Mu'minin. So if he had, for example, fought them, he could have killed a bunch of them, but what if they had attacked and killed the entire family of the Prophet, Fatima al-Zahra, and the children? The most important thing here is the children, because they are the heirs of the successors of the Messenger of Allah. Imam al-Hassan, Imam al-Hussein are in the house, and also the daughters of the Fatima al-Zahra, they are in the house, the little daughters. So Imam Hassan and Imam al-Hussein, they were small children, so they were 7, 8 years old. So they were definitely, if a war had broken out, then they were killed there inside the house, and there remained no trace of Islam and the Messenger of Islam after that, because these personalities, they actually introduced Islam to us. And they actually prevented the entire Islam, Messenger of Islam, to perish by the hypocrites, and also by Bani Umayyah, for example. The things that happened in Karbala, for example, and other wars that Amir al-Mu'minin had, and also al-Hasan alayhi salam. So the entire Islam, which was so young and new, would have perished, would have not lasted, because all the hypocrites, those who came to power, wanted was the power itself. So they were just thinking as themselves as kings, and that's what they wanted. They took Islam as a cover, of course, because they could not go against it directly back then. Anyways, if the people who had been killed, for example, the family of the Prophet entirely, and a few other companions of the Prophet, then we would have definitely a different outcome. Most certainly, because this is what the Messenger of Allah has said, that the Messenger of Allah, of course, does not say something which is just which is not true. So the Messenger of Allah takes everything, all commands from Allah Azza wa Jal. And we also see that in this case also that in the book of al-Wasiyyah, for example, the topic is very wide. So if you present all those reports that the Messenger of Allah talked to Amir al-Mu'minin about these things that will happen, it will take a long time. But we saw there that actually Jibreel alayhi salam came down to the Prophet, the Messenger of Allah, and made Amir al-Mu'minin to swear to make a covenant with the Messenger of Allah and with the angels that he will not fight against them unless he has enough supporters, as the Messenger of Allah told him. So the situation is definitely does not allow for Amir al-Mu'minin to fight them. If it was in a battle situation, they already knew that Amir al-Mu'minin was not someone with whom they could mess around. And in this situation, there was no other way for Amir al-Mu'minin to defend his family, his wife, than things that he already did. So that's also my answer. There are a lot of other aspects that we can take into consideration for this, but I think these two main arguments answers the question or the objection, that Amir al-Mu'minin, of course, defended his wife, but other than that, the other question of why Amir al-Mu'minin did not answer the door and so on, this is another another distinct question we will address that inshallah in this show.
Thank you, Sayyid, for those wonderfully explained, and it makes it absolutely clear. After listening to you, Sayyid, for those, and listening to your elucidation of the actual events, it's clearly seen that this was a fluid situation that occurred in a very short span of time. It wasn't a prolonged exchange, and it wasn't a prolonged campaign at the door. It was something that occurred in a very short time span. And we can see that from what you're saying. Yes, thank you. That Hazrat Ali ibn Abi Talib al-Islam did, in fact, retaliate. When there was a forced entry and there was a confrontation between the Sahaba, swords were drawn and broken. Imam Ali al-Islam retaliated by grabbing Umar by the scruff of his neck and throwing him to the ground. Contrary to what so-called scholars would like us to believe, that there was no retaliation on the part of Mullah Amir al-Islam. And it is clearly evident from Shia sources that, in fact, Hazrat Ali ibn Abi Talib al-Islam did, in fact, react with indignation and wrath, and in fact, grabbing somebody by the scruff of their neck and throwing them to the ground is not a sign of a pacifism or reluctance to engage. But then, as Sayyid Firdaus clearly explained, it was the will of the Prophet which held Mullah Ali from going any further. And it was Imam Ali al-Islam's continued adherence to the command of the Prophet, may peace and blessings be upon him and his progeny, which actually allowed the transgressors, Umar and his band of sycophantic tyrants, to survive that encounter and walk away from the champion of Arabia. And the second aspect to this is, if you have a group, a gang of thugs and inbreds at your door trying to attack you and your family, you will try everything possible to defuse the situation so that your family is not further injured. And exercising patience or exercising restraint in that situation is a sign of wisdom rather than a sign of reluctance. The fact that swords were drawn, one of the transgressors was grabbed by the scruff of his neck and thrown to the ground, and the fact that there was retaliation, but then there was restraint exercised, paints a completely different picture to the common Sunni narrative, which is that nothing was done whatsoever, which is completely ridiculous, and it absolutely ignores with a passion the contents of historical narratives and historical accounts contained in Shia sources. It's a blinkered, moronic approach to viewing history, where you will only focus on your own selective, biased reports, which reinforce your prejudice and your limited understanding of an event, simply to push an ideological stance. And this is the problem with Sunni analysis and Sunni academia to this day, that they will promote ideology over facts and over ground realities. And this is, I think, the problem that is continuing. But hopefully with these shows, we aim to at least dispel some of the fog that is surrounding historical events because of this self-imposed ignorance by the Sunni academic world. Hopefully, brothers Sayyid Ali, Imam and 𝗧𝗪𝗦𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗪𝗧, I hope this is the case, that you will go into the will of the Prophet in future shows and help us to understand and bring to the fore the commands that were given to Hazrat Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, and the reasons why the will was made. All of this is something which is relevant and which is often ignored by Sunni academia, simply because it forces them to reevaluate their own stance and their own allegiances and loyalties to historical tyrants and despots who, unfortunately, they have chosen to put on a pedestal. I think that's all for today. Inshallah, we will be back in our next show with further questions. But if you have any queries or questions regarding what has been discussed today, please either leave a comment or contact us and ask for that clarification. Asking the question is the key to knowledge. And if you don't ask, you won't know. Allah Hafiz from all of us at Bayat al-Ghadeer. Allah be with you all.